20 Black actresses who overcame extreme poverty. Imagine a world where your dolls' faces are eaten by rats, where you wear potato sacks to school, and where your home is a condemned building with no water. This isn't a horror movie, it's the true origin of Black Hollywood royalty. Most people see the diamonds and the private jets, but they ignore the extreme poverty that forged these icons. From the violent projects of Newark to the heatless squats of New York, these women didn't just escape the gutter. They turned their trauma into a multi-billion-dollar empire. But here's the cold truth: the world loves the glory, yet fears the grit it took to get there. Are these legends successful because of their pain or despite it? Tap that subscribe button and join Black Excellence Legends as we strip away the glamour to reveal the raw, unbreakable spirit of the world's greatest survivors. You won't look at success the same way again. Whoopi Goldberg. Born Karina Lane Johnson in the Chelsea section of Manhattan, Whoopi Goldberg's ascent to legendary EGOT status, winning an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony, is a profound narrative of navigating the harshest urban realities. Long before the bright lights of Broadway or the set of The View, Whoopi was raised by a single formidable mother, Emma Harris, who worked multiple jobs as a nurse and teacher after her father abandoned the family. The financial strain was constant, placing the household firmly in the grip of New York City's lower-income struggles during the 1950s and 60s. Her path was further complicated by undiagnosed dyslexia, a condition that led her to drop out of high school as she was unfairly labeled slow or difficult. This period of academic failure spiraled into a dark chapter of substance abuse during her teenage years. However, Whoopi's story is defined by her re-entry into the world. In the mid-1970s, as a young mother herself, she relocated to San Diego, California, with nothing but a dream of performing. To survive, she took on grueling, unconventional labor that few would associate with a future star. She worked as a bank teller, a bricklayer, and even a mortuary cosmetologist, applying makeup to the deceased to keep food on the table. Her extreme poverty wasn't just a lack of funds, it was a daily battle for dignity. Her breakthrough didn't come from a silver platter, but from The Spook Show, a one-woman performance where she portrayed diverse characters with such raw honesty that it caught the eye of director Mike Nichols. This led to her 1985 film debut in The Color Purple, earning her an Oscar nomination and cementing her place in cinema. Whoopi's journey proves that the scars of poverty and addiction do not have to be a life sentence. Instead, they can be the very tools used to build a monumental legacy. Nia Long. Nia Long's narrative is a masterclass in navigating the intersection of systemic hardship and cultural identity. Born in Brooklyn, New York, her early years were marked by the instability of a fractured household. When her parents divorced, she moved to Iowa with her mother, Talita, who was pursuing a master's degree. In this environment, Nia was often the only Black face in her classroom, facing a sharp, isolating brand of racism that forced her to develop a thick skin at a tender age. However, the true test of her grit arrived when they relocated to South Central Los Angeles during the height of the 1980s. Living in South Central during that era meant existing in a landscape defined by economic divestment and the escalating tensions of the streets. While her mother worked grueling hours at multiple jobs to keep their small household afloat, Nia witnessed the stark realities of urban poverty firsthand. Money was a constant ghost, always haunting, never sufficient. Despite the surrounding chaos, her mother prioritized Nia's artistic spirit, enrolling her in acting classes even when funds were scarce. Nia's journey wasn't a fairy tale, it was a strategic climb. She attended Santa Monica City College, but eventually made the harrowing decision to leave her studies behind, betting everything on a career that rarely opened doors for young Black women from her background. Her breakthrough in the 1991 cult classic Boys in the Hood wasn't just a career milestone. It was art imitating life. Playing Brandy allowed her to channel the authenticity of a girl who understood exactly what it meant to survive the hood while dreaming of something greater. Nia's success transitioned her from a girl struggling to find her footing in Los Angeles to a cinematic mainstay with a career spanning over 3 decades. She didn't just escape poverty, she mastered the ability to reflect the dignity of the Black experience on screen, proving that your zip code does not dictate your destiny. Tina Turner. The narrative of Tina Turner, born Anna Mae Bullock, is perhaps the ultimate blueprint for female agency in the face of absolute deprivation. Long before she was crowned the Queen of Rock and Roll, Anna Mae was a sharecropper's daughter in Nutbush, Tennessee, a rural landscape where poverty was as baked into the soil as the cotton crops. Her childhood was defined by a fractured domestic life. She was often shunted between estranged parents and grandparents, never knowing the security of a stable home. In the segregated South of the 1940s, her existence was a daily navigation of systemic lack where the American dream felt like a distant myth meant for someone else. Her entry into the music industry via Ike Turner seemed like an escape, but it quickly morphed into a different kind of imprisonment. For 16 years, Tina endured horrific physical and psychological abuse, while the duo climbed the charts with hits like Proud Mary. By the time she gathered the courage to flee in 1976, she had nothing. She literally crossed a midnight highway with only 36 cents in her pocket and a blood-stained white suit. For years following the split, Tina lived on food stamps and cleaned houses to support her children, a jarring fall from the global stages she had once commanded. The industry wrote her off as a has-been and a nostalgia act, a label exacerbated by the ageism and racism prevalent in the 1980s music scene. However, Tina's extreme poverty phase in the late 70s was the crucible that forged her legendary solo comeback. With the 1984 release of Private Dancer, she achieved what few thought possible, a total reinvention at age 44. She transformed from a victim of circumstance into a global powerhouse, eventually amassing a net worth of approximately $250 million before her passing. Tina didn't just survive poverty and abuse, she transmuted that pain into a raw electric stage presence that revolutionized rock music. Her story remains a staggering testament to the fact that your current zero is merely the foundation for a future empire. Halle Berry. Halle Berry's ascent to becoming the first Black woman to win the Academy Award for Best Actress is a narrative defined by grit, not glamour. Born in Cleveland, Ohio, her early life was shadowed by the volatility of an abusive father, a trauma that left her family emotionally and financially fractured. After her father abandoned them, Halle was raised by her mother Judith, a psychiatric nurse who struggled to provide a stable upbringing in a racially charged environment. However, the true extreme poverty chapter of Halle's life began when she moved to New York City to pursue modeling and acting. Within weeks, the small amount of money she had saved evaporated, leaving her with no safety net. When she reached out to her mother for financial assistance, she was met with a stinging refusal. This tough love forced Halle into the most harrowing period of her life, living in a New York City homeless shelter. For months, she navigated the grim reality of shared spaces, uncertainty, and the stigma of destitution. While many would have seen this as a sign to return home, Halle viewed the shelter as her greatest education. It stripped away her ego and replaced it with a survivalist instinct that would eventually define her career. She took on menial jobs from waitressing to bartending, working double shifts just to afford a shared apartment and the bus fare to auditions. By the time she landed her breakout role in Jungle Fever in 1991, Halle was already a veteran of hardship. She famously refused to bathe for weeks to accurately portray a drug addict in the film, a level of commitment born from her first-hand witness to the desperation of the streets. Today, with a net worth estimated at $90 million, Halle's journey from a shelter bed to the Oscars stage serves as a powerful testament to self-reliance. She proved that being at the bottom isn't a permanent state, but a vantage point from which you can see exactly how far you need to climb. Queen Latifah. The story of Queen Latifah, born Dana Elaine Owens, is a masterclass in transforming hood survival into a global empire. Long before she was a household name and a Hollywood powerhouse, Latifah was a young girl navigating the bricks, the gritty public housing projects of Newark, New Jersey. Raised in a household where money was a ghost and every dollar was accounted for, she witnessed the exhausting grind of a single mother working multiple jobs to provide a semblance of stability. In the late 70s and 80s, Newark was a landscape of economic divestment and rising street tensions, a place where a young Black girl's dreams were often expected to be small. However, Dana Owens refused to be a statistic. Her childhood was marked by a visceral understanding of extreme poverty, not just as a lack of cash, but as a lack of access. To help the family, she worked at Burger King as a teenager, scrubbing floors and flipping patties while honing her craft as a beatboxer and rapper. Her world was further shattered by the sudden tragic death of her brother Willie in a motorcycle accident, an event that plunged her into a deep depression and financial uncertainty. Yet it was this very environment of struggle and grief that birthed Queen Latifah. By choosing a name that means delicate and kind in Arabic and pairing it with the title of Queen, she staged a psychological coup against her surroundings. She used hip-hop not just as a creative outlet, but as a ladder to pull herself out of the projects. Latifah's transition from a teenage rapper with a message to an Oscar-nominated actress and savvy businesswoman is a testament to her regal hustle. She broke the cycle of poverty by becoming the first female rapper to earn a gold record and eventually built a career that spans across sitcoms, jazz albums, and blockbuster films. Today, with an estimated net worth of $70 million, she remains a cornerstone of Black excellence. Latifah didn't just escape the Newark projects. She used the resilience she learned there to build a throne for herself, proving that royalty isn't about where you start, but how you command your journey. Mariah Carey. The story of Mariah Carey is often shrouded in the glitter and glamour of her 5-octave range and diva persona, but her roots are anchored in a far more gritty reality. Born in Huntington, New York, Mariah's childhood was a volatile mix of racial tension and financial instability. After her parents' divorce, she lived with her mother, Patricia, an opera singer, who struggled to maintain a consistent income. They moved frequently across Long Island, often landing in shacks or rundown apartments, where the young Mariah felt like an outsider. The family was so destitute at times that they relied on the charity of neighbors just to put food on the table. Mariah has often reflected on this period as one of deep isolation, where she felt neither Black enough nor white enough, all while navigating the shame of poverty. Upon graduating high school, Mariah moved to Manhattan with nothing but a demo tape and an unrelenting ambition. This was her true extreme poverty phase. She lived in a cramped apartment with several other girls sleeping on a mattress on the floor and working a dizzying array of part-time jobs, waitress, coat checker, and hair salon assistant to pay rent. There were nights when she survived on nothing but a single box of macaroni and cheese for the entire week. However, she used this deprivation as a creative catalyst. While working late-night shifts, she spent her dawn hours in local studios pouring her frustrations and dreams into the songs that would eventually comprise her debut album. Her meteoric rise began in 1988 when her demo reached Tommy Mottola of Columbia Records. But Mariah's success was never just about luck. It was a desperate escape from the life she left behind. Her debut album spent 11 weeks at #1, transforming her from a girl who couldn't afford a warm coat into a global phenomenon. Today, with a staggering net worth of $350 million to $510 million, depending on the year's catalog valuations, Mariah stands as one of the best-selling artists of all time. Her journey proves that her butterfly motif isn't just an aesthetic, it's a symbol of her transformation from the dust of poverty into a legendary force of nature. Viola Davis. The story of Viola Davis is not merely a rags-to-riches tale. It is a harrowing account of survival that borders on the cinematic. Born in 1965 on her grandmother's farm at the Singleton Plantation in South Carolina, Viola began her life in a one-room shack. When her family moved to Central Falls, Rhode Island, the poverty they encountered was visceral and unrelenting. They lived in a condemned building that was infested with rats, creatures so aggressive they once ate the faces off Viola's dolls. The apartment lacked heat and hot water. During the brutal New England winters, the family had to pile onto a single bed to keep from freezing, using their coats as blankets. For Viola, extreme poverty meant a constant gnawing hunger that defined her waking hours. She recalls a childhood where she often had to scavenge through trash cans for food or steal from local stores just to silence the ache in her stomach. The shame was compounded by the smell of poverty. The lack of laundry soap meant she often went to school with odors that invited bullying. Her father, a horse groomer, struggled with severe alcoholism, adding a layer of domestic volatility to their financial desperation. Yet it was within this environment of absolute lack that Viola discovered her lifeline acting. At age 9, after seeing Cicely Tyson on television, she realized that performance could be a portal to a world where she wasn't the poor girl. Viola used her education as a weapon to destroy the cycle of poverty. She earned a scholarship to Rhode Island College and later attended the prestigious Juilliard School, but even then the financial ghosts of her past lingered. Her breakthrough didn't happen overnight. It was the result of decades of grueling theater work. Today, Viola Davis is a multimillionaire and an EGOT winner Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony, one of the most respected performers in history. She has effectively turned the lead of her traumatic childhood into artistic gold, proving that the hunger that once nearly broke her became the fuel for a career that changed the face of Hollywood. Diana Ross. The legacy of Diana Ross is synonymous with high fashion glamour and Motown royalty, but her origin story is rooted in the industrial struggle of post-war Detroit. Born the second of 6 children, Diana grew up in the Brewster Douglas housing projects, a sprawling complex designed for the city's working-class black families, who were often navigating the razor-thin line between survival and destitution. Her father was an Army veteran and factory worker, and her mother worked tirelessly to keep the large household functioning. In this environment, extreme poverty wasn't always a lack of shelter, but a lack of cushion. One missed paycheck could mean the difference between a hot meal and an empty stomach. The projects were a microcosm of the systemic barriers and racial segregation that defined 1940s and 50s America, where the horizon often ended at the edge of the concrete courtyard. Diana, however, possessed a relentless, almost kinetic drive to transcend her surroundings. Even as a teenager, she worked as a busgirl and a seamstress, saving pennies while studying design and modeling. She wasn't just looking for a job, she was meticulously crafting a persona that would eventually conquer the world. Along with her friends Mary Wilson and Florence Ballard, she formed the Primettes. Their hustle was legendary. They would linger outside the Motown headquarters for hours begging for an audition, until Berry Gordy finally gave in. Diana understood early on that in order to escape the gravity of the projects, she had to be more than just talented, she had to be supreme. When the group was renamed the Supremes, Diana became the focal point of a cultural revolution. She transitioned from a girl living in public housing to the leader of the most successful girl group in history, achieving an unprecedented 12 #1 hits on the Billboard Hot 100. Her solo career only amplified her status, leading to an Oscar nomination for her portrayal of Billie Holiday in Lady Sings the Blues. Today, with a net worth estimated at $250 million, Diana Ross stands as the ultimate matriarch of black entertainment. She didn't just move out of the Brewster Douglas projects. She demolished the ceiling for every black female artist who followed, proving that a girl from the projects could eventually own the world. Oprah Winfrey. The life of Oprah Winfrey is the definitive rags-to-riches blueprint, a story so visceral it borders on the miraculous. Born to a teenage single mother in rural Kosciuszko, Mississippi, Oprah's entry into the world was marked by the biting chill of Jim Crow-era poverty. Her early years were spent on her grandmother's farm, where the lack of resources was so absolute that Oprah famously wore overalls made from potato sacks. To the local children, she was a target of ridicule. To the world, she was a statistic of the impoverished South. This wasn't just a lack of money, it was a lack of basic dignity, where her only companions were the farm animals to whom she would recite speeches, unknowingly honing the oratory skills that would later move nations. However, the extreme poverty of her bank account was secondary to the trauma of her surroundings. After moving to Milwaukee and later Nashville, Oprah navigated a gauntlet of horrific abuse and instability. Beyond the private jets and sprawling estates, her legacy is defined by her philanthropy, founding schools in South Africa, and donating hundreds of millions to educational causes. Oprah's journey from a potato sack dress to the Presidential Medal of Freedom is a staggering reminder that your origin story does not have to be your final chapter. It can be the fuel for a global revolution. Tasha Smith. Tasha Smith's life story is a visceral testament to the power of transformation. Born in 1971 in Camden, New Jersey, a city frequently cited as one of the most dangerous and economically depressed in America, Tasha and her twin sister Sidra were raised by a single mother who was only 15 years old at their birth. Her childhood was an intense landscape of extreme poverty, characterized by the constant threat of gang violence and the devastating shadow of her mother's drug addiction. In an environment where survival often meant compromise, Tasha dropped out of high school, feeling that the traditional path offered no escape from the cycle of the streets. The extreme poverty Tasha faced wasn't just financial, it was a crisis of environment and identity. During her late teens and early 20s, she navigated her own struggles with substance abuse, including a period of addiction to cigarettes, marijuana, and cocaine, as well as a heavy reliance on alcohol to numb the pain of her surroundings. However, Tasha possessed an innate eruptive energy and a natural comedic timing. In a bold move of desperation and hope, she relocated to Los Angeles with nothing but her ambition. She began her career in the grueling world of stand-up comedy, sharing stages with future legends like Dave Chappelle. She worked multiple jobs to survive while honing her craft, eventually finding her anchor in a profound spiritual awakening that led her to sobriety and a renewed sense of purpose. Tasha Smith's breakthrough came through her collaboration with Tyler Perry, specifically her role as Angela in Why Did I Get Married? Her performance was so raw and authentic because it was informed by the very around-the-way girl resilience she developed in Camden. Today, Tasha has evolved far beyond an actress. She is a highly sought-after director and an acting coach who has mentored some of the biggest names in the industry. With a net worth estimated in the millions, she has successfully pivoted from the hopelessness of the projects to being a powerhouse behind the camera. Her journey proves that your past, no matter how fractured, can be the very foundation upon which you build a career of authority and grace. Rosario Dawson. Rosario Dawson's story is a radical departure from the typical Hollywood discovery tale. Born in 1979 in New York City to a teenage mother, Isabel Rosario's childhood was defined by extreme poverty in its most literal urban form. At age 5, her family became squatters. They moved into an abandoned, crumbling tenement building in Manhattan's Lower East Side. This wasn't a standard apartment. The building was a hollowed-out shell with no electricity, no heat, and no running water. To maintain basic hygiene, the family had to haul plastic buckets of water up several flights of stairs just to bathe. Rosario spent her formative years navigating a neighborhood ravaged by the 1980s crack epidemic, witnessing firsthand the devastation that systemic neglect and poverty inflict on a community. The extreme poverty Rosario experienced forced her to grow up with a heightened sense of social consciousness and resilience. Her parents were political activists who taught her that a lack of money did not mean a lack of agency. They worked tirelessly to transform their squat into a livable home, a process that instilled in Rosario a builder mentality. Fate intervened at age 15 when she was discovered sitting on her front porch by director Larry Clark and writer Harmony Korine, who cast her in the controversial film Kids. While this was her entry into the industry, she didn't leave her roots behind. She used her initial earnings to help her family stabilize their living situation, remaining grounded in the reality of the struggle she had just escaped. Rosario Dawson's career has since blossomed into a multifaceted empire. From blockbusters like Men in Black 2 and Sin City, to her leading role in the Star Wars universe as Ahsoka Tano, she has become a global icon. However, she has never abandoned the activism born in that heatless tenement. She is a prominent advocate for voting rights, environmental justice, and affordable housing. Today, with an estimated net worth of $16 million, Rosario serves as a bridge between the marginalized and the elite. Her journey proves that coming from nothing can give you the perspective to change everything, turning a childhood of buckets and squats into a lifetime of influence and advocacy. Angela Bassett. Angela Bassett's narrative is a profound study in the power of internal standards over external circumstances. Born in New York City, her early life was marked by the instability of her parents' divorce, leading her to move to St. Petersburg, Florida, to be raised by her aunt and uncle. When she eventually reunited with her mother, Betty Jane, they lived in a low-income household where financial survival was a daily calculation. In the late 1960s and 70s, extreme poverty for Angela meant navigating a world of government cheese and social welfare where the limitations of her environment threatened to stifle her immense intellectual and creative potential. However, her mother, a woman of uncompromising pride, instilled in Angela the belief that poverty was a condition of the pocket, not the mind. This environment of lack fueled a desperate, disciplined hunger for excellence. Angela didn't just dream of acting. She weaponized her education to ensure her escape from the cycle of struggle. She became a high-achieving student, eventually earning a scholarship to Yale University. Even at an Ivy League institution, the ghosts of her impoverished background remained. She was often the student with the least resources, working multiple jobs while balancing a grueling academic and theatrical load. She earned both a BA and an MFA from Yale, emerging not just as a talented actress, but as a classically trained powerhouse who refused to accept the stereotypical victim roles often offered to Black women from poor backgrounds. Angela Bassett's breakthrough came when she channeled the raw survivor energy of her upbringing into legendary roles, most notably as Tina Turner in What's Love Got to Do with It. Her portrayal was so electric because she understood the visceral reality of starting from zero. Today, Angela is a global icon and one of the highest paid actresses of color on television, with a net worth estimated at $25 million to $30 million. She has transformed from a girl living on state assistance into Hollywood royalty, proving that academic rigor and a refusal to be defined by a zip code can turn a childhood of scarcity into a lifetime of sovereign success. Debbie Morgan. The journey of Debbie Morgan, a pioneer who became the first Black woman to win a Daytime Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actress, is a profound narrative of transcending generational trauma. Born in 1951 in Dunn, North Carolina, and raised in the Bronx, Debbie's early years were overshadowed by a heritage of extreme poverty and domestic volatility. Her father was a butcher and her mother a teacher's aide, but the modest income was often secondary to the climate of fear within the household. Debbie grew up in an environment where the scars of poverty were intertwined with the silence of abuse, a cycle she saw mirrored in the lives of her mother and grandmother before her. For Debbie, extreme poverty wasn't just about empty cupboards. It was the psychological weight of feeling less than in a society that marginalized Black families. During her youth in the 1960s, she navigated the gritty reality of New York City's urban struggle, where opportunities for young Black women were strictly rationed. She felt the heavy burden of the monkey on her back, the metaphor she later used for the inherited insecurity and lack of self-worth that often accompanies a destitute and abusive upbringing. Yet Debbie possessed a quiet, luminous resilience. She used acting as a sanctuary, a place where she could express the emotions that were suppressed in her daily life. Her breakthrough role as Angie Hubbard on All My Children made her a cultural icon, but her most significant victory was internal. In her candid memoir, The Monkey on My Back, she laid bare the reality that her professional success was achieved while she was still financially and emotionally unlearning the habits of poverty. Today, with a career spanning over 4 decades in film and television, including acclaimed roles in Eve's Bayou and Power, Debbie Morgan has a net worth estimated at $5 million. Beyond the wealth, her legacy is her courage in breaking the generational curse. She has transformed from a girl paralyzed by fear and lack into a beacon of healing, proving that you can rewrite your family's history even when the first chapters were written in the ink of hardship. Nicki Minaj. The trajectory of Nicki Minaj, born Anika Tanya Miraj, is a fierce demonstration of how the extreme poverty of one's youth can be transmuted into a relentless drive for global dominance. Born in St. James, Trinidad and Tobago, Anika was moved to Queens, New York at age 5. Her early years were not the typical immigrant dream. They were a survival gauntlet. Her family struggled within a landscape of economic scarcity, but the true terror came from within the home. Her father battled severe drug addiction and a violent temperament, leading to a volatile environment where he once famously set their house on fire while her mother was still inside. For Nicki, poverty was not just a lack of funds, it was a lack of safety. This atmosphere of trauma and lack created a hustle that would later redefine the music industry. To escape the grim reality of her neighborhood and a home life defined by fear, she created alter egos characters who were powerful, wealthy, and untouchable. This psychological survival mechanism became the foundation of her artistry. Before the world knew her as the Queen of Rap, she was working at Red Lobster in the Bronx, where she was famously fired for her temper, a fire born from a refusal to be treated as less than because of her service industry status. She spent years in the underground mixtape circuit, navigating a male-dominated industry with a desperate, razor-sharp focus on financial independence. Nicki Minaj's breakthrough in 2010 with Pink Friday shattered every glass ceiling for female rappers. She didn't just want to be a successful artist, she wanted to be an institution. She leveraged her music into a multifaceted brand encompassing perfumes, fashion, and film roles in hits like Barbershop, The Next Cut. Today, with a net worth estimated at $150 million, she is the wealthiest female rapper in history. However, she has never forgotten the girl in Queens who couldn't afford her student loans. Through her Student of the Game initiative, she has paid off hundreds of thousands of dollars in tuition for her fans, proving that her empire is built not just on wealth, but on the empowerment of those still fighting to escape the bricks. Diahann Carroll. Diahann Carroll's story is a sophisticated blueprint of how grace can be a weapon against the indignities of extreme poverty. Born Carol Diahan Johnson in 1935 in the Bronx, she was the daughter of a subway guard and a nurse's aide. While her family eventually found a modest footing, her earliest years were defined by a heart-wrenching trauma born of economic necessity. When she was just a toddler, her parents felt they could not financially sustain her in the city and sent her to live with her aunt in North Carolina for a year. This period of separation left a lasting scar of abandonment that Diahan would later credit as the driving force behind her relentless need for success and self-sufficiency. Growing up in Harlem, the extreme poverty Diahan navigated was more than just financial lack. It was a psychological ceiling imposed by a segregated society. She attended the High School of Music and Art, the famed Fame School, but she often felt the sharp sting of being a low-income student among the city's artistic elite. To bridge the gap, she entered beauty contests and began modeling for Ebony magazine as a teenager, using her striking appearance to generate the capital needed for her education. Diahan realized early on that to escape the limitations of her upbringing, she had to present an image of attainable luxury, a version of Black womanhood that was so polished the world could not look away. Her breakthrough was historic. In 1968, she starred in Julia, becoming the first Black woman to lead a television series in a non-stereotypical, non-domestic role. She shattered the image of the poor Black woman by portraying a middle-class nurse and widowed mother, a role that was revolutionary at a time when Black characters were largely relegated to the background. She continued her dominance with an Oscar nomination for Claudine in a legendary run on Dynasty as the first Black bitch on television, Dominique Devereaux. By the time of her passing in 2019, she had amassed a net worth of $25 million. Diahan Carroll didn't just escape poverty, she redesigned the identity of the Black actress, proving that even if your life begins in a Bronx tenement, you can finish it as the very definition of royalty. Loretta Devine. Loretta Devine's trajectory into the pantheon of Black Hollywood royalty is a testament to the power of artistic labor as a tool for economic liberation. Born in 1949 in Houston, Texas, Loretta grew up in a household defined by the industriousness of the working-class South. Her mother, Eunice, was a beautician, and her father, James, was a laborer. While they were a tight-knit family, they existed in a socio-economic bracket where every cent was earmarked for survival. In the Houston of the 1950s and 60s, extreme poverty for a Black family often meant living within the structural limitations of Jim Crow narrow avenues for wealth accumulation and the constant threat of financial collapse. Loretta's childhood was not defined by luxury. It was defined by the church, the community, and the realization that education was the only viable out. The extreme poverty Loretta encountered as a young adult was a direct result of her pursuing the arts. After earning her undergraduate degree from the University of Houston, she moved to New York City to attend Brandeis University for her MFA. This was a period of profound financial precarity. Loretta navigated the grueling Manhattan hustle of the 1970s, living in cramped conditions and working a litany of survival jobs while auditioning for theater roles. She experienced the starving artist reality firsthand, where paying for a subway token or a basic meal was a daily victory. However, she possessed a signature, sweet-toned voice and a formidable stage presence that eventually landed her a spot in the original 1981 Broadway cast of Dreamgirls. While she was famously passed over for the film adaptation of Dreamgirls, Loretta used that setback as fuel to build one of the most prolific careers in television and film history. From Waiting to Exhale to her Emmy-winning role on Grey's Anatomy, she has become the reliable anchor of Black cinema. Today, with a net worth estimated at $10 million, Loretta Devine has transformed from a Houston girl with a dream into a respected mogul of character acting. She has successfully leveraged her unique talent to build a financial fortress, proving that a career built on consistency and the work is the surest way to erase the fingerprints of poverty from one's life. Mary J. Blige. The story of Mary J. Blige is the sonic embodiment of resilience. Born in the Bronx and raised in the slow-town projects of Yonkers, New York, Mary's childhood was a masterclass in urban survival. Her father, a Vietnam veteran suffering from PTSD, abandoned the family early on, leaving her mother, Cora, to raise two daughters on a nurse's aide salary. The extreme poverty Mary navigated was compounded by a toxic environment of substance abuse and violence that permeated the housing projects in the 1970s and 80s. For Mary, the projects were not just a place of financial lack. They were a landscape of trauma, where she witnessed things a child should never see, leading her to drop out of high school in the 11th grade. Before she was the queen of hip-hop soul, Mary's life was a series of desperate maneuvers to escape the gravity of Yonkers. She worked as a directory assistance operator and spent her free time in a local mall's karaoke booth where she recorded a cover of Anita Baker's Caught Up in the Rapture. That recording made its way to Andre Harrell of Uptown Records, but even after signing a deal, Mary's struggle wasn't over. She spent her early career battling severe clinical depression and drug addiction demons born from the poverty and abuse of her youth. She was often broke, even while famous, navigating a music industry that exploited her raw talent while she lacked the financial literacy to protect her earnings. Mary's breakthrough was more than just musical. It was a public exorcism of her pain. Her 1994 album, My Life, became a manifesto for anyone trapped in the cycle of trauma and lack. She eventually took control of her life and finances, diversifying her career into acting and earning 2 Oscar nominations for Mudbound. Today, with a net worth estimated at $20 million, Mary J. Blige stands as a symbol of the breakthrough. She didn't just leave the projects, she used her voice to build a bridge for millions of others to follow. She proved that you can transmute the gutter into gold, turning a childhood of scarcity into a legacy of sovereign power. Keke Palmer. Keke Palmer's narrative is a compelling look at the working poor experience and the immense pressure of being a family's primary breadwinner before reaching adulthood. Born Lauren Kiana Palmer in Harvey, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago often plagued by economic divestment, Keke was raised in a household where passion for the arts met the harsh reality of empty pockets. Both of her parents were actors who met in drama school but had to take grueling, low-paying jobs to survive. Her father worked at a polyurethane plant, and her mother worked with high-risk students. In Harvey, extreme poverty wasn't always a lack of a roof, but the precariousness of living paycheck to paycheck in a community where the local economy was crumbling. When Keke's talent became undeniable at age 9, her family made a radical high-stakes gamble. They moved to Los Angeles with almost nothing. This period was defined by severe financial instability. To save on costs, the entire family lived in a cramped one-bedroom apartment. Keke has frequently shared memories of their struggle days in California, where they had to choose between paying for gas to get to auditions or buying a full meal. Unlike many child stars who come from industry families with cushions, Keke was the financial engine of her household. Every audition wasn't just about a dream, it was about whether the electricity would stay on next month. Her breakthrough in Aquila and the B2006 changed everything, but Keke's true victory was her transition into a multifaceted mogul. She became the first Black woman to star in her own show on Nickelodeon True Jackson VP and the youngest talk show host in TV history. Today, with a net worth of approximately $7.5 million, Keke is a powerhouse of the hustle. She has leveraged her early hardship into a career as an actress, singer, host, and entrepreneur with her digital network, Key TV. Keke Palmer didn't just escape the financial limitations of Harvey. She became a blueprint for professional longevity, proving that a child born into scarcity can grow up to own the entire factory. Jada Pinkett Smith. The narrative of Jada Pinkett Smith is a stark, neon-lit account of survival within the urban trenches of Baltimore, Maryland. Born in 1971 to a teenage mother struggling with a severe heroin addiction, Jada's upbringing was the antithesis of the Hollywood royalty image she projects today. In the late 70s and 80s, Baltimore was a city besieged by the crack cocaine epidemic and economic divestment. For Jada, extreme poverty was an ambient noise. It was the sound of sirens, the sight of boarded-up row houses, and the constant reality of a household where the primary caregiver was incapacitated by substance abuse. Raised largely by her grandmother, she learned early on that the world was a predatory place where weakness was not an option. Before she was a cinematic icon, Jada was a hustler in the most literal sense. She has candidly admitted it to being a drug dealer during her teenage years, navigating the dangerous street corners of Baltimore to secure the financial independence that her family could not provide. This wasn't a choice born of greed, but a survival tactic used by a young girl who saw no other immediate way out of the crushing cycle of poverty and neglect. However, even while immersed in the street life, she maintained a dual existence, attending the Baltimore School for the Arts alongside her close friend Tupac Shakur. This period was a razor-wire balancing act. By day, she studied dance and theater. By night, she faced the visceral dangers of the drug trade. Her breakthrough was a deliberate total pivot away from the streets. In 1990, she moved to Los Angeles with nothing but her grit and a refusal to look back. She landed a role on A Different World, which dismantled the thug trajectory she was on and replaced it with a professional one. Today, Jada Pinkett Smith is a global mogul, an actress, producer, and host of the groundbreaking Red Table Talk, with a personal net worth estimated at $50 million. She transformed the street-smart intuition of her youth into a sharp business acumen, proving that even a girl who once sold drugs to survive the projects can grow up to influence the global cultural conversation. Pam Grier. Pam Grier's journey to becoming the first female action star is a story of rugged resilience born from the vast, often lonely stretches of the American West. Born in 1949 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Pam was a military brat whose family frequently moved due to her father's career in the Air Force. While they were a stable working-class unit, the family faced a devastating socio-economic blow when her father retired. They moved to Denver, Colorado, where the transition to civilian life was marked by a steep decline in resources. For Pam, extreme poverty was the quiet struggle of a family trying to maintain dignity while living in neighborhoods where the promise of the American dream felt increasingly out of reach for Black families in the 1950s and 60s. However, the defining trauma of Pam's youth was far more visceral than financial lack. At age 6, she was the victim of a brutal sexual assault while staying with relatives, an event that left her mute for several years. This forced her into a world of internal observation and self-reliance. She eventually found her voice and her strength on her grandfather's farm, where she learned to shoot, hunt, and handle herself in the wilderness. By the time she moved to Los Angeles to pursue film, she wasn't looking for fame. She was looking for a way to pay for film school. She worked as a switchboard operator at American International Pictures, using the job as a vantage point to learn the industry from the inside out. Pam Grier's breakthrough was a cultural explosion. In films like Coffee 1973 and Foxy Brown 1974, she became the face of the blaxploitation era, but she brought a revolutionary dignity to her roles. She didn't just play a hero, she played a woman who refused to be a victim, drawing directly from her childhood and survival skills. After a period of industry neglect, she staged a legendary comeback in Quentin Tarantino's Jackie Brown 1997, proving her longevity. Today, with a net worth of approximately $10 million, Pam Grier lives on a ranch in Colorado, coming full circle back to the land. She didn't just survive the trauma and scarcity of her youth. She became the blueprint for the independent, powerful woman in cinema, proving that a girl who once lost her voice could grow up to command the silence of an entire theater. The lives of these icons, from Viola Davis's fight against starvation to Oprah's rise from poverty, prove that extreme poverty is often the forge for Black excellence. They didn't just survive the projects or systemic neglect. They weaponized their trauma to conquer global industries. However, this raises a provocative question for our community. Is this level of legendary success only achievable through such radical suffering, or has the world simply made struggle a mandatory prerequisite for Black greatness? Here at Black Excellence Legends, we wonder, can we build empires without the trauma? Or is the fire of the bricks exactly what makes these legends unbreakable?